We'll see, this may or may not work. There is a little bit of vegetation out here. You know, it really doesn't look like lake grasses to me though. It almost looks like shoreline grass, like maybe this lake just finished filling up. It's a heavy grass, like a stocky grass. Kind of matches what I'm seeing up there on the bank. Again, we're only in that 3 to 5 range, so it wouldn't be a surprise at all if the lake had risen 3-4 foot. Might need to get out a little deeper. We're not exactly using the perfect bait for the job, I don't think. Wish we had that square bill, but we don't. We're gonna go with what we got. I think it'll produce. Just trying to bust the grass off. We seem to be starting to fall off the end of the point. I'm in 9 foot here. A little more comfortable in that zone. I like to have a little water under the boat. You know, we're not from Texas or down south where 4 feet's deep water. We're used to having 10, 20, 30, 100 feet of water under the boat. Not that we don't have shallow fisheries, we do. Clear Lake is a shallow fishery, but for the most part, we got some water under the boat. There's one. Smallmouth. Not a bad little fish. We'll take him. We're starting to piece it together. I think we'll leave this spot in just a few minutes and run around and see if we can replicate it and put a good bag together. Another one. Next cast. Might be a little better fish. Maybe. Maybe not. Oh, largemouth though. They seem to be schooling together. And he had that bait eaten. Maybe this time I won't turn the camera off, huh? See what we can do. Little better fish. Hey, buddy. So really coming into today, I was under the impression, just from, small talk over the years, that one, not a lot of people fish here. Two, it was primarily a smallmouth fishery with a few striper in it. And I might have heard like one mention of a largemouth ever. But from where I'm sitting, it's a split largemouth, smallmouth fishery. I've yet to see a striper, although these are like the worst conditions in the world for a striper. I'm sure they're out deep suspended right now. But I did not expect to catch this many largemouth. We're just gonna adapt with the day, see if we can keep catching fish. Again, when you see me ripping that rod like that, all I'm doing when I'm running the bait, it's crankbait, so you're feeling it vibrate. Anytime it stops vibrating, I just give it a couple good hard rips. Either you're banging into bottom really hard, but that you ought to feel, or you've caught up on some grass and it stopped the bait from vibrating. You give it a couple good rips, just get that grass cleaned off. A lot of times you can save a cast that would otherwise be ruined. Maybe get an extra fish in the boat during the course of the day. Ooh, here's a couple good ones out here. Couple nice fish. 9 foot of water, again, pretty darn shallow. Shallower than I planned on fishing today. I really thought these fish were gonna be backed off. But the day's early, they might back off. What else do we have? Go to the underspin. Fish it a little bit deeper back through those fish. Start out in that like 15, 18 range. Give it one, maybe 2 casts. Yep, we're on bottom. The reason for the underspin, I throw a Kitech style bait on just a bare swim bait head a lot. But today I picked up that underspin to start just because of visibility. That blade turning under that bait will just give it a little extra something, help those fish hone in on it. We may not need it. We may drop down to just a regular swim bait head later. But for now, I'm going to throw that blade, see if it helps those fish locate the bait at all. This is just a 4/8 Kitech fat swing impact on a, I guess this would be a 3/4 ounce Blade Runner underspin. That's not what they call it, but that's what it is, an underspin. Just basic shad profile color, keeping it pretty simple. We were right about there being shad in this lake, that's for sure. I'm seeing piles of little, well, you know what, maybe they aren't shad still, but there's a whole lot of small minnows in this lake that match that shad profile. That's definitely going to be what we want to imitate all day, unless we go to like a jig or something like that to imitate the craw. So I'm sure there's a pile of them in here too. Oh, we're fouled up. All right, so we've definitely established there are fish on some outside structures. I mentioned earlier there were a couple islands in the lake, or humps in the lake. So here's one of them. It's It's looking to me like it's maxing out, I don't know, like 7-8 foot, something like that. There's some shad with a fish sitting on them there. Another shad ball out on the fringes. We're gonna run some of this outside structure. That's kind of where my comfort level lies anyway. We can get up on the bank for sure a little bit later if we need to. But where I would like to find them is out here in the open, find these fish that are feeding in schools and just put the hammer down. So we're gonna run a couple of these little tops and see what happens. So with that first island top having nothing on it, I'm still gonna run the other island top here in a minute, but I also don't wanna get too locked into one pattern. Maybe I was just on a spot out there and not a pattern. So I've come back up against the shore. I'm seeing some fish in about 19 foot, but there's the last little bit of shade here on this wall. So I'm gonna take that topwater, run that shade, and just see if there's some up real shallow. Right after we fish all those. Largemouth again. Little guy. He just slapped it. It's on his gill plate. Interesting. Definitely not what I had in my head. You know, I knew that I didn't have the answers. I know nothing about this place, but you still kind of formulate a plan ahead of time, and a bunch of little largemouth was not what I had pictured coming out of here. I was thinking a bunch of, you know, 1, 2, 3 pound smallmouth. One other thing I forgot to mention this morning is that this is a reservoir. That's a key point. That's important information. You can see the dam there in front of us. So this lake should get pretty significant water fluctuation throughout the year, which is part of why I wanted to start offshore. Obviously the striper should keep the fish away from some of that offshore structure. That's probably where they're hunting. But when you've got a lake with a lot of fluctuation like that, a lot of ups, a lot of downs, especially when we didn't know there were largemouth in here, the bulk of your fish are going to stay on that outside structure. They're not going to go way back in the creeks and coves because they're going to have to turn around and come right back out. Now that we know it's a largemouth lake, we could probably reevaluate, run the backs of some of these pockets. There's not big cuts here, but there's some cuts that go back a couple 100 yards. We could probably be running back in some of those and targeting a little bit better class of largemouth in whatever grass or cover might be in there. But I'm not sure we're gonna do that. I really came here with smallmouth on the brain. I think we're gonna keep trying to find them, but we'll see how it goes. which is not an advertisement for anybody. I open my reel when it's brand new. I put one brake on, one brake popped out, 5 brakes in. So basically with that,
you have a lot of various types of fish relating to the same type of structure. You know, the main lake points have schools of whites, they have schools of big schools of gizzard shad out there on them, and schools of bass. So, you know, we spent a lot of time trying to break down and distinguish from what was what. So we spent a lot of time on the hummingbird onyx today, and you know, that paid off big. We found 2 good schools of fish, and both of them, you know, gave us quality bites. As far as baits, you know, we stuck with the 6 and the 10XD. Those are really my mainstays for cranking. I'm starting to use the 8XD a lot more around brush and things like that, but I mean, my old